Donald Gray is a professor at the School of Education at Aberdeen University, but his particular interest is in science and sustainability issues, and he's been working with One Seed Forward on the idea of garden schools. Bob Donald is the chair and founder of One Seed Forward. So him and Donald have been working really hard in the northeast of Scotland and elsewhere on this idea. Bob Donald founded One Seed Forward in 2017. Amy Krampf, she's a teacher of home economics and at Gracebound High School in Edinburgh City. Welcome, Amy. Laura Colucci Gray, Senior Lecturer in Science and Sustainability at University of Aberdeen, and Jonathan Hancock, welcome to you as well, Research Assistant at University of Edinburgh. And that's all from me, magically, so I'll stop sharing and I'll pass on to my next speaker.
I think that's you, Bob.
It is, yes. I'm just getting set up with Windows. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see a screen there saying Cultivating Education webinar. Thank you, Natalia, for the confirmation. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be sort of talking to you again about our garden school programme. This month we're going to be looking at the process of planting and growing and what the impact of that is as far as the opportunity for learning in your schools. You'll see there is a QR code on screen. You don't have to rush to download that at the moment. As Natalia said, we will be sending out a copy of the recording to you. But that will take you directly to our module on our website of OSF Garden Schools, and so we can get more information from what we're talking about and access to more resources. But anyway, let's have a little chat about planting and growing. So last month we talked about seeds and germination, and planting and growing is really the next step in the process of bringing a seed from its dormant to maturity. So some seeds are planted directly into the ground, whilst others are germinated on heated sort of trays or windowsills, particularly this time of year. Now, as we know, it's a little bit early in Scotland maybe to be planting directly into the ground. There's still a wee bit of frost, to say the least. But we can certainly look at the germination process and really thinking about that. So again, so we're starting the seed germination process now. Then really we're on the first step towards the planting. So what we're going to do today is we're going to sort of have a little talk about various things that are related into the planting and growing process. So you'll see on screen that we'll have a chat about root systems. We're going to be comparing the space above and below the ground as far as plants are concerned. We're going to have a chat about water and the impact that water has on the development of seeds and plants. We're also going to look at some practical processes for you in your schools about planting in different spaces and some concepts such as square foot gardening and companion planting. And then we'll talk a little bit about plant care as well. So I suppose at this stage, I guess the question is, what is planting? Yeah. So planting involves the active process of placing a little seedling into the ground or sowing a seed directly into the ground. When we're doing this planting, we can actually look at some of the items that we've discussed earlier in the process, and so we can revisit topics such as soil and seed germination, so we can get the pupils again looking at it from a practical perspective rather than the theoretical one that we may have done before. Central considerations in the planting process are, as we've said already, looking at the physical space above the ground or under the ground, about watering, the importance of watering, about the importance of access to light, and also the competition for nutrients. And so,
sorry, Bob, the slide hasn't moved on in mine. Have you moved the slide on?
Yes, it's on main topics.
All right, okay, that's main topics is still the same one. Yeah, I thought you'd gone on to the next slide. That's okay, carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So basically what we're talking about is really about the process of planting, and that we want to ensure that every plant has got enough nourishment. So what we want to do is really look at each of these individual concepts in turn. So why don't we actually talk about roots and root systems? So roots, as we know, are usually hidden underground. And the purpose of a root is to absorb water and nutrients and oxygen that are in the soil and pull this up into the plant. The other thing that roots do is they anchor and support the plant. So particularly when it's in a young state, we want to make sure that it doesn't get too buffered by winds, etc., because that will then damage the stems on it. You know, some plants actually have roots above the ground, though, and I think it's quite interesting to chat with pupils to get them to think about what type of plants have roots above the ground. One of them, for example, is corn. And what happens is that the aerial roots, as they're called, because they're above the ground rather than below the ground, help to anchor the plant as well. So we can do some investigation with pupils about what roots have got. Are they all below ground? Are they above ground? And if they're above ground, what impact does that actually have? How do root systems work? Well, on the actual root itself, there's little tiny hairs, and that sucks up water and nutrients to the center of the root, and that's sucked up through something called a cortex. And again, it's quite good to look at the biology of the root systems and get the pupils to think about these new words that maybe sort of like they can use in their various lessons. And as the water is sucked up through there and the nutrients sucked up through to the center, it's then distributed through the plant or it's contained and stored for later on. So if the plant doesn't need that nutrition or water at that point in time, it's stored within the root system and then it can be called upon later on. We talked last month about the idea of being able to see root systems, and I think it was Donald that's shown you a glass experiment where you can get visibility of what roots are doing below the ground. I think it's good to revisit that at this stage so children can see what the roots are doing. And you can do that either in a glass jar or even in a CD case, depending on if you're of a certain age and you remember CDs, that you can be planting a seed in some soil and then just having it in a warm area, you can see the roots develop at the same time as the plants are developing. So it's a good idea to sort of continue that concept. What I want to do now is I want to talk about two types of different roots. One are fibrous roots and one is tap roots. So hopefully you'll see a picture there, which has got very colourful carrots on the right-hand side and beans on the left-hand side. So the left-hand side is really looking at the fibrous method of roots. And so this is the whole idea about them being anchored in the ground. The roots are really quite tall compared to the size of the plant above it. And so it's demonstrating the search that they've got for water and nutrition and so on. Another good way of actually getting the system and the pupils to get visibility of root systems is to take them by pulling out some weeds. So if you were to go into the garden, pull out some weeds, it allows them to start thinking about what the idea is of the amount of space that the roots are taking up from the ground. They can measure the amount of soil that's been taken up with it. But they can also look at the structure and the root pattern and see and compare the size of the plant above the ground compared to what's happening below the ground. Plus, it also means that you get them to do some weeding in an educational style, which if only I could get lots of my volunteers to do that, I'd be delighted to continue to do that process. And on the right, what we've got an example of a taproot. Taproots, when they're edible, are known as root vegetables. So we're thinking things here like parsnips, carrots, and so on. The picture we've got here is of rainbow carrots because of the different colours. And there's an opportunity again here to get the pupils to do some investigation about the history of things like carrots, because there's a folklore where the reason that carrots are orange is because the Dutch growers in the 1500s decided that they wanted to honour William of Orange, and to grow carrots in that colour. It's a great story, but it's not true. I'm not going to tell you the truth of it because I'd like you to do some investigation with your pupils as to why the colours are actually sort of like different than that. But there's lots of stories that go around all types of vegetables, and so I think it's worth exploring that with your pupils. I also want to touch on this stage about the fact that when you're looking at root vegetables, you should really be very careful about how you're growing them. Carrots in particular do very well in a sandy soil where the root system manages to sort of get through any sort of lumps in soil, etc. So if you've got wonky carrots that you've seen in the shops, or some more funny ones, shall we say, you may have seen in videos. The reason about that is that it's not got the sand going through, so it can't develop the particles. So I decided I was going to do a demonstration of people to say how big a carrot could I grow. So I went and got soil, I went and got lots of sand, I mixed it through, I got a very, very deep bag that I could grow my wonderful carrots in, sowed the seeds, and they were looking fantastic on top, and we had lots of green growth. And so the time was coming to pull them up, and I pulled them up, and instead of being long carrots, they were very, very short, small, stubby ones. And it's because I planted chanterelle carrots, which only grow to about 2 centimeters. So the key thing is that always read the packet, and also just get the pupils thinking about the fact that a carrot is a carrot is a carrot. So there's lots of different things you can do with it. So lots of opportunities for you to develop sort of stories and educational points with the pupils on that. Okay, I want to talk about water because water is really the immediate source of nourishment to the plant. Again, you can use the ideas here to look at some biology lessons. For example, water is one of the raw materials that helps to create chemical reactions for plants in order to survive. So if we look at something like photosynthesis, for example, it's a process by which plants use water, but they also use sunlight and carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy. And that energy is often stored as glucose. So you can develop this concept through planting and growing to look at biology items with your pupils. The other thing as well is we can talk about things like transpiration. So transpiration is really how a plant manages to cope with changes in temperature and the fluctuations within there. So if it's too hot, if it's got too much water, it will lose water through its leaves to help it protect its plant. So it's kind of a bit like perspiration for us, where if we're too hot, then we will perspire, basically just our core temperatures. The same thing happens within plants, but through a process called transpiration. And again, you can talk to the pupils about that. Other things we can get the pupils to do is to actually touch the plants to see where the water is stored, because sometimes it will be inside the leaves, it could be sitting on petals, could be in the stem, could be in the surface. So there's lots of different opportunities you've got with that. The other thing that you can do is you can actually compare the impact that water would have if you left vegetables in water. So leaving, say, beans overnight and carrots overnight in water, what will the impact be? You would like to think that one will get soggy and one won't. But you can explore that with pupils as to why the structures of these are different and why does the water hopefully then run off the carrot but is absorbed through the skin of the bean. One other idea for some learning opportunities here is if you were to take, say, carnations, white carnations, and you were to put a white carnation in a bowl of water, and one bowl of water you could put with red dye and one with blue dye. Over the course of a day, or slightly more, you'll start to see that the petals of the white carnation will start to tinge with blue or red because it's taking the water and pulling that up through the plant. So again, this is something you can discuss with the pupils, how the water moves through the plants. Okay, okay, we're going to talk about sharing physical space here. So all plants need physical space in order to get the benefit of the proper amount of light and nutrients and water and soil to thrive. Now, At the start of our garden school programme, we have a section, module ABC, which is all about garden design. If you've already done that with the pupils, you can actually go back and revisit it. But if you haven't, it's not a problem. What we can do is you can go and have a look at the module, but look at developing a growing plan with the pupils about what they should plant and where they should plant it. I realise that some of you will have different types of space within your schools, and will have different setups as far as gardens are concerned. This photograph that we've shown here is of a vertical wall. Now, Aberdeen City Council's Eco Group developed a programme called Edible Green Walls, and this was what they used. It is essentially plastic bottles that are pulled together and filled with soil and then put in with different plants. But and what we'll do is we will send a link out in the modules, or we will add it into the YouTube channel videos, so you can get direct access to that. And it was quite interesting because, again, it allows you, because it's clear, to see root system development, but also it's quite good to just let the pupils plant whatever they want in it, because it demonstrates whether you can really have a carrot or a strawberry or a pea or a pumpkin growing in something that size. It kind of puts it into a practical consideration for them. The other way of doing it, if you limit the space, is to do something called square foot gardening. If you've got very, very limited space, but you still want the pupils to get quite a lot of different crops. So why don't we look at that now? So square foot gardening was developed in the US, and it maximizes the amount of crops that you can grow in a small space. In this case, this is a program that we did at Woodside Primary, and it has a 1 metre square planter, so 3 by 3, and it was divided into squares. So there is basically 1 foot square in the planter, so there's 9 different squares. And we let the pupils decide what they were going to grow in it. It's amazing the amount of stuff that is grown in this one. So you'll see in the centre there are peas, and on the right hand side there's some carrots. We've got chard on the left, and the little red leafed one down in the bottom right hand corner is the remnants of some strawberries. There's a couple of mints in there, there's lettuce. The yellow leaves, the stalks that are at the top of the picture, look like some broccoli. It's actually bolted. There's an awful lot of happening, and it's very, very small amount of space. It was so successful because it was very, very nutritious and fresh produce that we put into it. But it also allows the pupils to look at the idea of what they can grow together, but how much they can grow within a small space. And so it's up to yourselves to work with the pupils to see, okay, if we've only got 1 square foot, so 12 inches by 12 inches, how many seeds can we plant in there, and how many things can we grow? But one of the big questions I would say from this is that you have to think about, will the plants that we're planting be competing for the same nutrients from the soil, or can they work together to help each other? And this is a process called companion planting. So why don't we have a look at that just now? So companion planting is the idea that you can grow plants together. So this is a polyculture in a bed rather than on its own, which is monoculture. So poly, Greek for many, mono, Greek for alone. Most things in farmers, for example, will grow a lot of things in a monocultural process. But what are the benefits of growing together? Well, you can create the right conditions for your plants. So you can have tall plants providing shade for smaller ones that may not want so much heat, for example. You can encourage natural insect predators, and you can reduce the growth of weeds. You can see by reading there the various benefits that there are of it. It also uses a lot of soil fertility, as different plants need different nutrients. And so it's well worthwhile investigating which plants work together and which ones don't. There's a program, there's an item called Three Sisters in the US, and we did it last year in Scotland, so it's a Scottish version of the Three Sisters. And what we did is we grew sweet corn, we grew peas, and we grew squashes. So the peas grow up the sweet corn, and the squashes act as a ground cover, so they suppress the weeds, so they don't actually make it too warm. So the 3 plants kind of work together. And I think that's a good thing to think about with pupils, is how they can work together. So can they actually, you could do maybe some drama out of thinking about this is what pupils can do together as opposed to doing separately. Another idea about companion planting too is that you can maximise the use of space and time. So what you can do is you can grow crops one after the other, so that, for example, we've said here, if you've got potatoes, you can then plant onions once you've lifted them. If you plant some radishes, which are quite fast growing, then you can plant some squash into the same areas. It's taken out different nutritional points on it. And I've just got some ideas here about some teaching activities for companion planting. I'll be very quick now, just a couple of minutes. So it's always a good idea to try and source a companion planting chart that's applicable for your country. There's lots of them that are out there, and they will sort of show you which plants work well together and which ones don't. Often vegetables and flowers will be very complementary, because the flowers will attract pollinators, which are good for the vegetables, but they'll also maybe attract some aphids, some caterpillars. So the vegetables that you want to end up eating will basically be able to grow because of the fact that they've got other flowers beside them. And again, what you can do is with the pupils, you can talk about what helping each other means. And we've already sort of said about the tall plant, for example. And again, using maths to calculate how much you can put into a small space, you can probably plant 20 odd radishes in the space of one broccoli plant. So again, it's a nice conversation to have with your pupils about that. As well, if you start to look at a bit more examining about things like monoculture, you could start to look at how farms and larger scale agriculture grows crops, and if they use companion planting or not. And is this a good thing or a bad thing for the planet? We are partners in the Countryside Classroom. Again, we'll give you a link later on to that. But they've got fantastic resources for teachers on a wide range of food and farming subjects, and particularly in agriculture. So I would recommend that you go to that. We are really lucky to be part of that, and there's lots of great resources in there. And you can also do things like investigating what insects come into the garden. So why don't you get the pupils out for half an hour, and they can count how many insects they've got and the different types of insects that they have. Right, very briefly, plant care routines. So once we've actually got the plants and seedlings in the ground, it's important that they're kept weed-free and they're kept watered. And so you should try and develop a program of maintenance with that. You can have the pupils responsible for their own square foot, but that kind of maybe doesn't really work in a teamwork type thing. You could have a wee bit of competition of that. But the other thing as well is that children love to water, so you could have that as a reward activity or a shared activity between them. I would recommend that you check out whether water is needed. The times that I went in when I was told by pupils that Bob said they should water Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, forgot about the fact it rained Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but still wanted to water, caused us a little bit of an issue with some plants. So always sort of like look at how much water they need. And again, engage with the local community so that when plants are growing during school holidays, that you've got somebody who's able to look after them. Okay, so really that's all I want to say about planting and growing. We have a programme which you can access through our Garden School website, which has lots of different modules onto that as well. I will pass over to Donald to see if he has anything that he wants to add or not to this section, and I'll stop sharing.
Great, thanks, Bob. I don't have anything significant to add, except that I would say that you mentioned touch in one of the slides, and that's one of the things I'd like to encourage teachers to do with their garden activities, is to use all their senses: touch, taste, sight, sound, smell, taste, all these things, because it's important to get the sensory activities in there, and helps to stimulate a little bit of conversation and so on. But conscious time moving on, so we'll pass over to Laura and Amy and Jonathan to talk about what they've been doing at Gracemount School.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming along. So my name's Amy Cramph. I'm a teacher of home economics at Gracemount High School. I previously worked with Laura last year to do like a data collection project with existing S2 gardeners. And based on like people feedback and how we felt the project went, we decided for this year with our newest ones to really make it more pupil-led and really, as Donald just said, really explore all of their senses when they're taking part in activities within the garden. So it's supposed to be pupil-led sensory exploration and really building on their agency, and so they're able to take responsibility within the garden and maybe think of a project they can complete within the garden. So we've got several projects kind of on the go at the moment, which I'll talk about more as we go through the PowerPoint, and really have meaningful discussions about climate change, climate action as well, and a lot of the pupils for S1s that actually really articulate about their concerns about climate change and the future and how we can be more sustainable as well. And then finally, to kind of conclude our S1 project, we are going to put on like a little plant or bake sale, which we just started potting on these little seedlings, and we're making, having these ideas for recipes for our bake sale as well.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, so we are privileged that in Gracemount High School there is an existing garden space, and it is actually quite large, and it's set aside on the kind of right-hand side of the school as you get through to the front entrance, and it is protected, sheltered by a very tall hedge. So actually, when you go in there, it's a kind of interesting space. It seems to be quite different from how the school grounds feel, just in the front area. So as Amy said, we're working with a small group, which is an elective gardening group, S1 pupils, and Jonathan and I both work in the university, and we are in a role of university teachers, researchers in a way, so collaborating with Amy in looking at what this garden space can do and how it can motivate the kids, and whether it offers something to them that perhaps kind of normal curriculum or sort of more standardized teaching would kind of normally offer. We call this a STEAM lab. People might not know what the word STEAM means in kind of everyday language. It's just an assemblage of subject: science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. But in this particular case, what we really want to do is to draw upon the potential of this different disciplines when they're integrated, a bit like what Bob was saying. It's about the carrots and the history of the carrots, but it's also about the science and how it grows, and it is also about how customs and traditions, and how we cook it, what we kind of understand of food and so on. So it's a kind of inter and transdisciplinary space. And particularly, like Amy said as well, what we're really concerned here is not so much the teaching of the growing, but encourage children to participate and look after themselves and feel well and included at school. I will now pass on to Jonathan, I think. Yeah, these are just some examples of the sensory activities that we started off in the garden space, as a touch, just picking up on what Donald was saying, touching the soil, not just using it as a resource, but actually understanding it as a living thing, touching the seeds, feeling them in the hand as potential again for growth and for life, and then taking care of one's own planter. You see here on the left, the plant that's been decorated with the soil. It clearly belongs to somebody. You can tell that there's a touch of the kids there. Okay.
Thanks, Lara. Yeah, so the garden space is really important to the group, but so too is the home economics classroom. And we've been doing some baking and cooking there, which is something they really enjoy. They enjoy that process. They enjoy tasting as well. So that's really important for them. What we've done is we've done some baking inspired by the garden. So here they're baking some bread models of the things that they planted in the planters. So there's some lettuce and some kale and things like that. And Amy was really encouraging them to think about the time it takes to sort of prepare and cook and bake the bread, and also the time it takes to tend to and grow the garden. So making those kind of connections between the two spaces. We are hoping to actually cook with some ingredients from the garden. In fact, tomorrow, that's the plan. So we're going to take some sage leaves that they've grown in one of the planters, take some parsley as well, maybe make a little salad or something like that. So we're further developing these connections and building on those sensory experiences as well to kind of engage their curiosity and their interest, because through these activities, they ask a lot of questions related to the garden. Yeah, and we haven't cooked with ingredients from the garden yet, but what we have done is use different materials from the garden. So there was a picture before of one of the pupils touching the soil with their hands, and what we actually did was go and collect soil from different areas of the garden. So some in the planters, some beside the tree, some at the bottom of the hill, and then we did some soil painting with them. So they used some glue and mixed it together to make these different art pieces. So it was really interesting to see how they noticed the different texture of the soil, the different marks that the soil could make, the different colors and textures they could create with it. And that started conversations about why soil from different areas has different textures and what that does mean for growing and planting in the garden. And also the artworks they created themselves. I mean, the eye is really interesting. Several of them were drawing eyes with the soil. And it started some conversations about observation and observing the changes in the garden. And what does it mean to observe? Do we just observe with our eyes, or do we observe with our other senses as well? So it was a really nice activity for them to express themselves in a different way, and also create some really nice conversations between the group too. So yeah, I mean, the artistic activities are really helpful in terms of being inclusive. It's really nice that some of the pupils that are really interested in art can connect in that way. I mean, particularly some that, you know, at certain points, maybe in the traditional form of participation, maybe they don't like that, look like they're fully participating in the planting or the weeding, perhaps. But you can see from the different drawings and artworks they're creating that they are connecting to the garden in a different way. I think that's really important to acknowledge that it is a meaningful space for them, but they maybe express it in different ways at different times.
Yeah, and this is just also an example, continuing on the theme of the sensory explorations and the observations. On the left, you'll see when we started on about September, October last year, it was a plan of what we were going to plant in the gardens, what we might want to do in there. We asked them to take pictures with their iPads just to see how the space also was changing over time. And then you'll see on the right, March 24, a plan. It looks a bit like the one that we made in October, but actually it's a sort of map of the things that we have done, like the things that have been planted, and things that are yet to be done, because actually this garden space is in transformation. It's quite different from what it was before. So this was almost like the map in March 2024 was a way to sort of reflect what we have sort of achieved and the things that they're still wanting to do. So this was actually a collective map. Everybody was sitting around the table and contributing ideas. Amy, do you want to add anything about this at all?
No, just to add, thank you, Laura. I think it was always really, we've tried like many different methods for them to get to record their thoughts and their opinions on the garden, and having these little snapshots in time, really showing the impact they've made on the garden throughout the, you know, since they started in August, essentially. They've like chipped away at little elements of the garden. And I think just this way of recording it as we've gone through has kind of highlighted that to them, and the space they're able to manipulate and make an impact on. Definitely. Yeah. And it's just good, especially in the March 24 poster that we made, just to get a sense of what they've achieved. And then this is what we're going to do on top of this to kind of conclude the project almost for this year, and potentially what we can do next year if the group is running again.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more about this transformative space, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that was that was all keyed up for me. Thank you. So
Yeah.
the photo on the left is kind of how the garden looked just towards the end of summer, just as autumn was knocking on our doors. So it's lovely bright colours, and the kids were kind of taken aback by it, and they're like, "Oh, this is our space. What can we do?" And then straight away they found like different zones within the garden that they could kind of naturally go to. They feel safe. They feel like they find it really interesting. Even just a safe space for them to go and have lunch during lunchtime. And they realise that this garden is open, all the time they're at school. And it's not only just limited to the time they have their gardening, for 2 periods a week. And that also led to them having more ideas about what they can do during the gardening lessons, okay? And then, so the picture on the right, it kind of it looks a bit derelict, but that was kind of in the new year, so in the midst of winter, and they were cutting down all the weeds, the bracken, the branches that were dying, and they really transformed that space. This little circle is actually like a sculpture garden. It's got a couple of stone kind of sculptures, for a better word, with little inscriptions and little poems in them. And they've really taken to that space and just seen a difference between the two pictures, not just because it's a change of season, but they've like lifted tons of dirt, got stuck in with spades, shovels, and really seen it as a space they can change and make an impact on in a meaningful way, not just like killing plants for the sake of it, but getting rid of the weeds so they can actually grow more items, and maybe put a little bench in the center and have it just a nice kind of meditative space as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jonathan and I were drawn into it. Jonathan, you want to say something about the day that got scratched and things? No.
No. I mean, it's amazing to see how it's changed. I think it's really nice the way they're thinking about reimagining the space now, as Amy said. But yeah, no, it's been great.
Yeah, they're very keen on making the space their own and accessible and hospitable is their favorite spot, and they just cleared it all out and made it so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I did find it quite strange because my first year running the gardening club, that they did take more interest at chopping things down rather than planting new stuff. Like, we'd show them the planters. We planted all these like wildflowers, carrots and onions, and they're like, "Nah, we want to weed. We want to cut these down."
But it needed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they love getting hands-on in that way, I think. And I think they liked creating, as you said, creating a space that they could then shape themselves, I think is maybe part of the attraction to it. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but just to say about that, I mean that as they were weeding this area, it was being revealed, although they knew already, that there is quite a lot of litter in the garden. That the tools that they're using are a little bit old, a little bit rusty, and that was starting conversations about wanting to have a bin, for example. But there are also challenges around that in terms of the garden being a space that's owned by the local council, and so if there's a bin there, then it maybe won't get emptied. So there are different challenges there and different conversations that are linked to the local community, the school community, the wider community that they're having right now. I mean, they're coming up with their own solutions to different things. They're talking about not only having a bin there, but having a rota to do that. In terms of the tools as well, they've spoken a bit about how other elective groups, maybe more traditional subjects like science, have more resources or seem to be more popular. But they have been talking about not their own group being exclusive. They said, well, why don't we collaborate with the science group, and we can do science experiments in the garden and things like that. So they're looking about how they can raise awareness of the work they're doing. And hopefully, as Amy and Lara were saying, the kind of documenting and capturing that they've been doing is the way that they can raise awareness of some of these issues in the school and in the community as well.
Yeah, and this is our kind of little point in time after all this work and kind of building our relationships, the working together in the garden, sharing food in the home economic space, planning together, sharing stories. We now want to actually bring other people into this, and these are the parents. So what you see here are little invitations that the kids have started to make to invite the parents to come in a few weeks' time to help out with doing some of the things that perhaps they are not able to do in the garden. As Jonathan mentioned, those heavy tools are okay to handle for a while, but it's, it could do with a pair of stronger arms. And it's also a way to sort of partake with the parents, the pleasure and of the work that they have done. So again, here you see them. You recognize the clouds that were painted in soil in some of the earlier slides, but you also recognize the GHS, the Grace Mount High School logo, appearing on this beautiful drawing of one of our artist kids in the group. I don't know, Amy, Jonathan, if you want to add anything here, Pete?
It did take a while for them to work up I won't say courage, but they're a bit hesitant to get the parents involved. Like, no, my parents will say no, they don't want to come. But like teasing the answers out of them and thinking, no, your parents will actually be really proud of what you've done. And it's a space for everyone in this community. And we do need a strong pair of hands, like Lara said. There's a lot of heavy lifting still to be done. But they kind of warmed up to the idea as more of again, like a celebration of what they've done, what they've achieved. And if enough people get involved, the results pay off, essentially.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, a bit like the presentation here, it's been a great conversation that we've had and how we've collaborated, with Amy. It's been fantastic. And it's really nice to see that the conversations are now going beyond the group and reaching the local community and reaching their parents. And it's right, they're a bit hesitant at first, but now they've seen we've got several parents that have agreed to come and help out. We've tempted them with coffee and biscuits, but it's great, and it's going to be a really nice moment, I think, to share that with their families, all the work that they've done.
Yeah, and I think this is us for now, isn't it? We will keep you updated on how things go.